Hello, hi. This is a test presentation for the speech I will deliver at the CD's European Interchange 2024. Here the usual disclaimer. Also, I just want to make it clear that my primary focus will be on the clinical data standard, so I won't cover any SEN topics. This is the agenda for today's presentation. Firstly, I will provide a brief introduction to the technical performance guide, and I will summarize the evolution of the guidance over the past 10 years. Then I'll dive into what I consider to be the major updates of last 3 years, and you will see if you missed any of them. Okay, let's start to see how much the technical performance evolved throughout the years, what kind of changes, new requirement, and see also if we made some advancement in the way we submit data to the FDA. If you are new to the FDA data submission requirements, you can reference my 2023 presentation for an overview. This is a slide I presented last year. But for today's presentation, obviously we will focus only on the technical performance guide, the guides that contain essentially more details. Briefly, we'll cover the technical performance guide. The guidance is organized in 8 sections, starting with the introduction and background, and the relationship dependency with other documents, such as the document mentioned in previous slide, such as the data standard catalog. The need for planning ahead and share the data standard submission plan with the agency. The supported exchange format, such as the much loved SACS-SPT. Section 4, that's the biggest section in size, number of pages. It's where the agency provides additional requirements on how to submit clinical data and non-clinical data using data standard. And that's, for example, you find an example for a number of SDTN domain where FDA provide additional requirement, or where FDA provide its preferred option when, for example, the SDTM standard provide different approach. The current therapeutic area user guides currently supported by the FDA, and what else the agency expect when applying standard in a particular therapeutic area. In the same section, additional technical guidance developed by the agency are also referenced, and that was also the topic of my last year presentation I mentioned in my previous slide. The use of standard terminology, such as the CDISC control terminology, and the use of external medical dictionaries, such as MEDRA. The ECTT electronic common technical document requirements and validation criteria, and the offer of the agency to the sponsor to test their data packages through a sample submission. The type of validation performed on submitted data packages by the agency before they are used by the reviewer. And this also includes a set of rejection criteria that if you fail, the package will be somehow blocked. And then the various appendix, such as the appendix that include the list of required and expected trial summary parameter the sponsor should include in its STM data packages. Let's take a look at how the guidance has evolved over the years. The first version was issued in January 2014, and it was released only for public review. You can actually still find on the FDA website the individual who contributed to the review process. So you can also find comments that were provided by different individuals. This is an example of a comment provided at that time. And I guess many of you might have guessed that who is the author of this comment. And yes, this was Joseph Hart. By the way, I asked the permission to Joseph to use his comment on my slide. So it appears that for this particular topic, nothing has changed since then. We are still struggling to define a new way of submitting data to identify a new standard. So we haven't yet progressed into the future for this particular aspect. However, perhaps there is a new hope with the new dataset JSON format that maybe soon FDA would be okay to accept, so that we switch to a more modern data exchange format. If you don't know yet what data JSON is about, I recommend attending tomorrow's section chaired by my colleague Silvia Faini. So it was, but it said, okay, there was a first release in January, but that was for public review, and then it was not until December 2014 that a second version was released. This was a pivotal moment, December 2014, because that's where the FDA stopped the clock, providing the sponsor with a 2 years windows, 2 years time frame to adapt their methods of creating clinical dataset packages to comply with the FDA required data standard. And this was for any, as you may know, for any study commencing after December. And that's why this standard applies for any study commencing after December 16, 2016. And since January 2014, more than 30 versions were released. As you may know, the FDA expect to release at least 2 versions every year, one in March and one in October. Until the last version, it's version 5.7 that was just released last March. You can also see how the number of pages or the sites increase throughout the years, and now we have a guidance that has more than double the number of pages that we had in January 2014. So if you start to look at what has changed since January 2014, here you can find some what I consider some key milestones, such as the increase of the maximum allowed file size, and so data size that is still, as of today, 5 giga. The recommendation to use the Fuse template for the study data association plan, the addition of the number of appendix, such as the one I mentioned before about required trial summary parameters, or the application by the agency of a set rejection criteria, and then other topic I'm going to introduce soon. Let's now look at some recent changes and see, as I said at the beginning, if you have missed any of them. So although so I said, okay, we'll look at the changes occurred in the last 3-4 years, but actually the one I'm going to discuss now, it's actually from 2018, and it regards the handling of subjects with multiple enrollment in STTM. The agency somehow mandated the creation of a second demographic domain with a structure similar to demographics, where all enrollment attempts are reported. However, even 6 years later, the exact structure and domain name, for example, for this particular domain, have not been universally agreed in our community. So we don't have yet a CD standard for that, although many have adopted the use of the so-called demographics X collected domain. And this is also, its implementation, it's also used, it's also described in the CD's wiki. So, and very likely it will be made available with the next release of implementation guidance for STTM, the implementation guidance version 4. Also, I would like to emphasize another clear requirement that it's often not followed. So the need, the requirement to have to uniquely identify subjects that that participated to more than one trial within an application. So this is also a regular concern, emphasized in several letters our sponsor received by the FDA. And this has been a topic of a discussion of, in case you want to know more, of one of our cited blog. Let's go to March 2023. The FDA introduced some specific requirement for submitting immunogenicity data through the immunogenicity domain. If you miss it, I recommend watching the CD's webinar from last June, where some changes occur with version 3.4 of SDTM and in the also in the control terminology. This change may impact the way data are mapped between three, let me say, laboratory dataset: the standard laboratory dataset LB, the MB microbiology dataset, and the, as I said, the IS immunogenicity dataset. This changes, particularly the changing scope of the IS domain with the version 3.4 of the STM guidance, could have a significant impact on your current or your current study or your current ongoing study or closed study. And actually, the proper mapping of laboratory data into STM is also a regular concern from the FDA. This is, for example, an extract of a request sent by the FDA to one of the sponsors following the receipt of the briefing package for prior to pre-NDA meeting. So the message here is to not consider all labs LB, in a few words. In June 2023 version, a significant change was introduced compared to previous version. The FDA mandated the submission of an additional custom laboratory dataset, essentially mirroring the structure of the LB. This dataset includes standard results variable along with corresponding normal range variables, and this separate dataset will contain results with US conventional unit instead of standard international unit. And with the latest version of the Technical Conformance Guide, the version released in March, the recommended name LC was also mentioned in the guide, which I think is not yet in the CD's control terminology. This requirement has been again clear in many of the submissions we have done in the past 3 years with the FDA or some specific reviewer in some specific division of the FDA requesting this, making this requirement, this request, even before this was officially added in Technical Conformance Guide. Which parameter could be impacted? Which domain could be impacted? It appears to be primarily affect laboratory data at the moment. Here is a list of non-exhaustive list of lab parameters that might be impacted by this requirement. So there could be more, but this is just an example. If you want to know more, do not miss the presentation from Iana tomorrow afternoon, with Iana diving into more details and possible STTM mapping scenarios. With the October 2023 version of the guidance, the FDA clarified how they want to see planned visit mapped into the subject visit domain. So essentially, the requirement is to map both occur and non-occur visit to subject visit domain, and to do it right now, so to not even if you are not using the version 3.4 of the STM guidance, where the scope of SV was clarified. So the recommendation is to also stop using the VE domain, which was initially recommended in the guidance for ongoing study disrupted by the COVID pandemic. So this was released just at the start of the pandemic. In the same version, the agency also clarified that variables such as non-standard variables such as reason for non-occurrence, so why, for example, subject visit was skipped, the contact mode, whether it was in person or telephone, or even the epidemic flag, which all these flags were, all these non-standard variables were introduced with the COVID pandemic guidance that I just mentioned. And this just became standard with the STTM version 2 implementation country 4. So the agency preference is that you do map it in the parent domain, so in a SFV, for example, and not in sub SV right now, even if you're not using the version 3.4. So this is a sort of deviation that FDA is asking to do in a way. The version 5.6 released last December introduced two new technical specification documents. with STM and ADAM example. This document covers two topics related to somehow patient-reported outcome, in particular in cancer clinical trial. And for those that were not in the audience, just before my speech, Jin Tao from Boehringer covered this topic. So in case you have missed the presentation, you can reach out there, or you can get a copy of the slide after the conference. Additionally, don't forget that the FDA in the technical performance guide reference other technical guidance you should follow. If you are, for example, doing a vaccine study, or if you're doing an HIV study. So if you miss it, I also discussed this last year. You can also find a poster this year that discuss the specific FDA CBER requirements for vaccine. So this is a presentation from GSK that you can find and you can see at the lunch break. It is a reference if you want to reach Lucy Estella's. And here we are in March 2024 with the release of the FDA version 5.7. It's important to note that regardless of whether new topics or new requirements are introduced, the FDA always plan to, as I mentioned at the beginning, to have at least 2 releases per year, one in March and one in October. In this latest version, there are very few additions. For instance, there are now requirements for having to follow the same naming convention across different domains when dealing with name of drugs or name of metabolites. So these apply to exposure dataset or trial summary dataset with certain parameters, or with the PC domain with the name of the metabolite. Also, the Appendix B has seen the addition of new required parameter to be included in the trial summary. So this is to flag if the study is ongoing or not. I believe this term is not yet in the control terminology. And also the reference of relatively new guidance, ADAM guidance for POP-PKK, among other additional standard guidance that are considered with the agency in line with the current agency business needs. Check also that there are, surprisingly, I didn't notice it before, but for example, the ADAM OCDS version 1.1, it's not among the standard that FDA consider in line with current business need. To conclude, there are several other modifications from past guidance that are worth to mention. These include the agency preferred method of handling logically skipped question, the clarification on how to handle split dataset in data packages. So they clarify that you don't need to submit a separate define. The requirements to have consistent visit time point naming convention between standard clinical domain and the PK domain, especially when these data are received from external labs that didn't follow your STM convention. This is often the case, often an issue with some PK study that I often review. And here the recommendation is to plan in advance and work with the central labs to set requirements from the very beginning through, for example, data transfer agreement. So reaching the end of my presentation with some final recommendation and consideration. So we have seen the requirements and expectation from the agency have increased through the years. In our experience, FDA also, in particular, some divisions such as the CBER, expect you to act quickly. So despite in theory we have 2 years to implement any new requirement. So the recommendation is that at least on key studies to monitor the change to the new requirement and eventually apply the changes when doable. And the last point is my personal concern, as sometimes some requirements from the technical performance guide are not fully aligned with the current available standard, or sometimes also the other way around, or sometimes also we have received very, can I say, non-standard or requirements, some requests from the reviewer that really were going against the standard. Thank you very much, and if you have any question, do not hesitate to ask.